This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
Well, hey everyone, it's Mark Bayer, and you are tuned to When Science Speaks. This episode of the show is sponsored by Bayer Strategic Consulting in Washington, D.C., which helps scientists get funding, gain influence, and build relationships with the most important stakeholders in their professional world. Reaching those goals often involves effective translation of complicated research into engaging jargon-free communication that boils down complex topics to capture the attention of decision makers and general audiences. If you're interested in getting a free resource to help you do that, go to complexitymadeclear.com to get the 11 keys for translating complexity. That's complexitymadeclear.com to get your free infographic used by science communicators, major organizations to boil down but never dumb down complicated science and technical topics for key decision makers. I am so pleased to welcome Dr. Tito Adhikary and Dr. Rachel Rudlaff to the show today. Tito is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Walensky Laboratory at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston. He's passionate about research as well as mentoring the next generation of STEM graduates and has served as a mentor for numerous summer students and interns both in the lab as well as during his graduate school training at Harvard Medical School. Tito also served as chair on the student boards of Science in the News and minority biomedical students at Harvard. Together with Dr. Rachel Rudlaff and Dr. Jason Eustace, Tito co-developed the Career and Professional Development Navigator at Harvard. He received his Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from the University of Calcutta, India, a Master's in Chemistry from the Indian Institute of Technology, and he earned his Ph.D. in Biological and Biomedical Sciences from Harvard University. Dr. Rachel Rudlaff is currently a scientist in the biotech industry and a contributor and co-developer of the Career CogCity platform. Throughout her scientific career, Rachel has launched initiatives aimed at graduate student career development and also on increasing feelings of well-being and belonging for graduate students and postdocs. As a graduate student, Rachel co-developed the Career and Professional Development Navigator with Tito and Jason and co-founded a peer mentoring program. Outside of science, Rachel co-founded and co-owns Fly Together Fitness, which is a pole fitness studio in Somerville, Mass. Rachel received a Bachelor of Science in Microbiology and a Bachelor of Science in the History, Philosophy, and Sociology of Science from Michigan State University. She earned her Ph.D. in the Biological and Biomedical Sciences from Harvard University and completed her postdoctoral training at the University of California, San Francisco. Tito and Rachel, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about CognitivCity, what its goals are, and the overall idea and framework for it for listeners?
Yeah, of course. So CognitivCity is a platform for graduate students and postdoctoral fellows in the life sciences to access resources that will help them on their professional development journey. And so we have compiled over 300 resources into this site, as well as additional readings or articles that might be applicable to professional development. And these are all easily searchable and navigatable on this platform that we will tell you more about. And one of the key features of the platform is that we've developed a taxonomy that bins all of these resources into specific, what we call as nodes, that allows trainees to find what they're looking for as quickly as possible. And this was really developed in response to, say, over the last 10 years, there's been a wealth of new resources that have been developed to aid graduate student career and professional development. But these might not be found by students at the time when they need them, or they might get an email about them that disappears into the ether and then they need it 2 years later. And so this site is a more permanent repository for all of these resources that enable folks to find things when they need them.
Yeah, I'm really excited to delve into this. Tito, is there anything else you'd like to add about CognitivCity before we actually get into the details?
Just that this was designed for the end user in mind. So this would include prospective graduate student applicants, current graduate students, both masters and PhDs, and also postdoctoral fellows in the life sciences.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you, Tito, too, when you all started working on Cognitive City, and what are the goals that you and Rachel and Jason and maybe other people in your team are hoping to achieve with Cognitive City?
Yeah, sure. So we started working on the Cognitive City about 2 years ago. For some background and context, we first worked together on building a website platform, the Career and Professional Development Navigator, which was designed to be a one-stop site to connect trainees with tools and resources, events, and news articles related to career and professional development. And while developing the site, we identified over 300 resources for graduate student professional development. And we built a taxonomy to categorize them so trainees could easily find what they need. And as the platform grew, Jason, our project lead and the director of student development and training evaluation at the program in graduate education, began to think about ways to make this information in the Career Navigator site more accessible to everyone. And he found the Cognitive City platform by a data science company, Exaptive, and he was excited about presenting the information in our Navigator site through Exaptive as an interactive network map that allowed the users to see connections between different resource categories and more quickly find what would be useful for them. And this really was the genesis for the Cognitive City, as we envisioned this next generation version of the parent Navigator site, where we sought to incorporate technological integrations that enhance the user experience to present a large number of resources to our audience. And we also wanted to make this library of resources that we had collated as a part of building the Navigator website accessible to any trainee of interest, including those from other institutions. And it's also worth emphasizing that by creating this free public version of Cognitive City, it also allowed us to make clear that this interactome is a public resource and not just for students at our institution. To develop CogCity, Jason then worked extensively with the team at Exaptive, initially with Austin Schwinn, and then with Kent Morgan, a data scientist there, to make the website as accessible and user-friendly as possible. A key aspect to making this user-friendly has been addition of visual graphics in what we call the iconography. The icons were developed by the artist and animator Gonzalo Brito, who is also the person who developed their demo video and is now working with us in developing the explainer videos for different use cases of the site. And Gonzalo also developed their logo and branding. And you'll notice that there's also a very beautiful design on the Submit New Resources page on our site and at the top of our Send Us Feedback page, which we call the Boston Bandscape. And this was designed by a Harvard graduate student, Olivia Foster Rhodes. And finally, I should mention that all of this work was propelled from funding that Jason received in the form of an HMS, or Harvard Medical School Dean Innovation Award in Education.
So cool. Really interesting. Rachel, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that Tito pretty much covered it.
Cool. I'm going to ask you, Rachel, how you see Cognitive City being different than other resources available online for your target audience. Tito talked about some of those aspects. I'd love for you to respond to this.
Yeah, I think one thing you're going to hear over and over again is us talk about our taxonomy. And that it was really what sets us apart in how we categorize these resources. The taxonomy was developed with Tito and Jason and I iterating and brainstorming a model that fit the resources that existed. And it was also developed based on Tito and I's lived experience as grad students and knowing what resources students need as they progress throughout their journey. And this taxonomy has been iterated on over the last 4 years with feedback from folks at conferences and other events. And this allows us to bin all of our resources into very easily navigable chunks of the website. And if we find new resources that don't fit into the taxonomy, what we've been able to do is update it to incorporate new things. And so it's constantly been evolving. And we think that this new version is the best one yet to encapsulate pretty much any resource need a graduate student might have. And for example, a couple of our resource nodes are charting your course, where this one allows students to map out how they plan to spend their Ph.D. So as resources for career development planning and just setting the stage for the trajectory of your time in graduate school. Another is academic and professional skills, which contains a wealth of resources on developing things like oral and written communication, among other skills. And then it concludes with the job search, so this is like the last stage of graduate career development where people are thinking about how they're going to continue on their journey after graduate school.
So cool. And I can't wait for this to launch and for folks to be able to access it. And you talking about infusing your lived experience into the development of this, making it so practical, also from a sort of both from a content perspective and then also from a career journey perspective through grad school, really important. Rachel touched on this and you did as well. Is there thinking about how the content itself is organized? Rachel just did a great job of fleshing out that aspect, but maybe also contrasting that from how other resources might be presenting information that are currently out there. And then you also talked about how this information is available not just to grad students at Harvard, for example, but more freely available. Can you build on some of those things?
Yeah, for sure. As Rachel mentioned, the thing you'll keep hearing about is taxonomy, right? Because that's really at the backbone of this Cognitive City initiative. And so how we did it is we organized the whole city of resources on this taxonomy framework that we had originally developed for the Career Navigator website. And it's built around these 7 primary nodes by resource themes. And these nodes are charting your course, wellness and safety, finding and securing funding, academic and professional skills, interpersonal skills, career exploration, and the job search. And to date, what we've done is based on thematic relevance, we've been all of these resources and assigned them to one or more of these nodes. And these nodes are then further subdivided into subnodes. For example, in the academic and professional skills node, we include subnodes for research skills, oral communications, and business skills, amongst others. And what this infrastructure of nodes and subnodes has allowed us to do is collate more than 300 resources into a very well-organized database, all within a visual and interactive interface. And in addition to resource themes, we also quickly realized that we needed an additional level of taxonomy that would organize resources by the type of content. For example, is it text or audio or video or database? And with that in mind, we built a second taxonomy framework with 3 primary nodes, namely readings and recordings, which contain information for the user to read or listen or view to get more information on a topic. And these could include resources such as books or audiobooks, news and commentaries, blogs, podcasts, for example. Secondly, interactive learning tools, which could be resources that you can manipulate or customize to learn more on the topic. And these could be databases and repositories, workshops, simulations and games, and websites such as ourselves. And finally, and thirdly, communities and networking, which are places to engage directly with others, sharing similar interests in a topic. And these could be conferences, interest groups and organizations, online platforms, for example. And so with that framework in mind, we laid out all of our resources in a network map connected with their parent resource nodes and subnodes on the main landing page of the site. And then throughout the platform, we built this filtering functionality to help the user find what they're looking for faster. And so this includes the functionality where users can toggle between displaying just readings and recordings or just interactive learning resources. In addition, one can also choose to display resources only within a specific resource theme of their choice. So for example, like if a trainee were browsing for funding opportunities, one-click selection of the finding and securing funding node allows for the display of all of the resources under that node. And so this saves the user enormous amounts of time, as well as reduces clutter when looking for resources under a specific topic. And then once within that node, selecting a particular resource opens a whole new window on the right side of the page containing information about that resource, including a direct link to the resource, and also listing the parent node, subnode, and provider or the institution providing that resource. And to your second question, that's what makes Cognitive City unique. It's our taxonomy, which is developed with graduate student career progression in mind. And the public version of the site is freely accessible and does not require institutional login. And this was very important to us because all of the resources that we promote are freely available and they have been developed by institutions and individuals across the country and the world. So we see ourselves as creating a platform that students can return to again and again through their training to find the resources that will best help them at no cost of their own.
Yeah, I just love this. Rachel, we've been talking about taxonomy. I agree that it's just so dynamic and exciting. But you all did a lot of work to come up with what that taxonomy should look like as far as talking to doing focus groups and things like that. Can you give us a sense, Rachel, of what that was like? How did you come up with these nodes, for example?
Yeah, it really started with a lot of brainstorming of what needs we had as graduate students and then looking at what resources existed. And when we started the Career Navigator, we began by just compiling everything that we knew of. And this really was founded by Jason, who has a very broad knowledge of the career development field and resources that had come out. And so he began to collect all of these different resources. And then we looked at them thinking like, hey, how do these fit into a broader picture? So some things are pretty easy, like academic and professional skills, written communication makes a lot of sense. Like, how do you get help on developing your writing skills? It's pretty clear what goes in there. And things like the job search, how to write a cover letter or resume, pretty clear. Other things required a lot more thought and integration. For example, we have a node that is wellness and safety. And just thinking about graduate student mental health, that has changed a lot since we started in 2018 through the pandemic to now in 2022. And so we needed a space to include more and more resources that were focused on helping graduate students stay healthy and stay mentally healthy, physically healthy. There's some information on staying financially healthy. And so those types of topics then took a little bit more fine tuning and finessing to figure out like, how can we come up with a node or a sub node that is specific enough that people understand what types of resources might be under it, but also broad enough that it will allow us to include many new types of resources as they're developed. And so that's where there are a lot of more gray areas that we work through and iterated on.
Cool. I know this is going to be a wonderful resource. Tito, as we wrap up, I'd like to ask you first, thinking about 5 years from now. So Cognitive City is on the verge of being launched right now. We're in August of 2022. But if you could think ahead 5 years or so, what would you like Cognitive City's contribution to be in terms of serving postdocs and grad students and PhDs, your target audience?
Yeah, sure. As co-developers of CogCity, what we would love is in 5 years is that the platform really becomes a widely used resource and hub for trainees seeking these tools and resources for multiple aspects of their career progression and professional development. And there's really a big need to think about how to lower the barrier to resources for graduate students. Trainees today are benefiting from a lot of work and contributions from people in the career education field. A lot of it goes unnoticed. But this platform is really about helping to reduce the extent of random navigations to find these resources. So not only are we helping students, but we're also helping to spread the word about amazing resources and getting the word out about the work of our colleagues. One of the main goals for us was really to have an impact on career development for graduate school students throughout the different stages of their training. And we've done so by offering a comprehensive toolbox for them to explore the range of professional possibilities and identifying their transferable skills. And indeed, we see Cognitive City as a supplement to the individual development plan process. And so when trainees identify their goals and places where they want to be, they can use this platform to find resources that go beyond just published literature to help them achieve those goals. And finally, we hope that this will help mentors. While there are PIs who may not be as motivated to help trainees with all aspects of professional development outside of regular academia, there are PIs who want to help out, but just don't have the right bird's eye view of resources that are available. And Cognitive City puts all this information in one place to help them better help their trainees. For example, a faculty member had recently reached out to us about updating their own lab resource page with mental health and wellness resources. So now we can just point to that faculty member to the appropriate subnode on our site, which contains all of the resources that they might need. So yeah, 5 years from now, those are some of the things I would love to see.
Definitely adding value across dimensions. Rachel, how about you? What's your vision 5 years from now?
One of the things that we've implemented into the website is a lot of tracking features that we worked with Exaptive to be able to put into the website. And so I hope that we'll be able to look at this from a data perspective and see what resources are most frequently accessed and hopefully create correlations between then what is most beneficial to students to help drive further resource development in areas where it's most needed. And I also think that having our taxonomy is a really useful framework for students to think about their PhDs. Pursuing the PhD, or I know this is often also for master's students, but for PhD students specifically, pursuing that journey can often feel a little nebulous. And so having a kind of framework to follow and see how the progression might fit there can be useful. And I also hope this will be useful to folks developing resources to be able to see what already exists and where there might be holes and what could be made to help students that is not already there.
Just fantastic. Dr. Rachel Rudlaff, Dr. Tito Adhikary, this has just been a great conversation, the beginning of really delivering so much value to this population. And I really know that listeners and folks all over the place, all over the world, are really going to find the resources that they need, mindset, frameworks, all in one place. And of course, time is so precious for all of us. When you're in a PhD program, master's student, postdoc, it's perhaps even more difficult to find time to do some of these things. So you and Dr. Jason Hustis has done such a great service here. And Rachel, I know there was a team also that was working closely together. And please go ahead and let us know, let listeners know who else was involved in bringing this amazing enterprise forward.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So Tito already mentioned a couple of the folks involved at Exaptive and involved in the graphics for the website. But in addition to those folks, Dan Emmons is a staff member at Harvard Medical School, and he's been integral in maintaining new submissions to the Cognitive City. So people submit new resources, they'll be going through him to get added to the site. And Tito and I were also joined by Dr. Bolutif Fakoya, who recently completed his PhD in the biological and biomedical sciences, and Sirianne Quechua, who's working on her PhD in the biological sciences of public health. And Sirianne is continuing to work with Jason during the launch phase and will be important for future iterations of the platform.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. Dr. Rachel Rudlaff, Dr. Tito Adhikary, you've done a phenomenal job, phenomenal service for this population all around the world. And I know it's going to have a massive impact. Thank you for that. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for being here on this episode of When Science Speaks. And I hope you'll be back next time for the next episode of When Science Speaks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe. Check us out on the web at whensciencespeaks.com, and we'll see you next time.